everybody. Aaron Blaise here, and we are super lucky today to have a really special guest today. We have Brad Raymond here with us, Mr. Writer, Director Extraordinaire, and we got a new course coming up with him. And we thought it'd be really cool to get together today and maybe have a little conversation about what you do and your philosophy and all kinds of cool stuff. And thought we would just go ahead and dive in.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate you having been part of Creature Art Teacher. And I've been a big fan of yours for so long, and it's a real honor to be a part of it. Thank you.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. Vice versa. And, we've got quite a few folks in our repertoire of instructors.
But there's not, not as many of them have kind of the history that you and I do that go back as far as it does. And so it's pretty cool to be able to sit here and maybe reminisce a little bit and talk about philosophy and all that kind of stuff, talk about the old days and the new days coming up and all that kind of thing. But one of the things I thought would be fun to talk about and really goes into your course is just your approach to story and writing and structure and all that kind of fun stuff. I've got my kind of personal approach that I do with it, but I'm really curious because you and I've never really had a chance to sit down and talk about this kind of stuff. So, I thought it'd be fun with the viewers kind of do that and let that kind of be an intro into the course itself.
Absolutely. What I learned is when I first started out, before I actually got into the industry, I wanted to write a screenplay and I didn't know how. So I started to read the books and I took some classes and I kind of, that's where my beginnings were. But what happens with structure in those books is they have, they give you like what happens every 10 pages, every 30 pages, every 25.
It's kind of the save the cat kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like Save the Cat. And even ones earlier than that had even bigger, broader sections. And it always kind of bumped for me because I couldn't figure out, I'm like, what happened in between?
Right.
Just tell me.
Right.
I need a step-by-step guide and I'll follow it. I kind of like to start with that, so that was all I had until I started working in story and then meeting some of these great storytellers. Then I started to realize how to fill in those blanks in between. And it took me about 10 years to figure it out. But once, kind of going through in the trenches and having to present things and get feedback, you start seeing by your mistakes, where you're wrong. And then you start figuring out where, you don't understand why you're wrong. You put in the change, and then later it takes a couple times, as like sometimes then you're like, oh, that's what that is, and that's why that leads. So I need kind of a step-by-step structure that I like to follow, and what it does is it kind of brings out your natural voice as a writer because you don't have to think on that side of the brain, sort of the side.
You can break it down into pieces, right? You can break it down into steps. And you and I kind of approach it in the same way as far as the way you're explaining it. And let's just go back a little bit. So when you're getting started on something, let's say you want to come up with a new story. Where do you tend to, and for me, it's kind of all over the place, but where do you tend to kind of start? Do you start with a notion of a world? Do you start with a notion of a story itself or a flawed character? Or what are the things that start your brain going as far as creating a story?
Good question. It happens in every different way, just like you're saying. It is a little bit, there is not a set thing for me, but what usually happens is, wow, I'd love to tell a story about the world of samurais, right? Yeah. And then that would be a beginning. Or it would be this, what if James Bond had to raise a baby?
Right.
That's another project that I'm working on. And then that just hit me. And then you go from there. So each one is so different. One's a world and one's sort of a specific. And then I kind of break out into world on the story-centric idea.
Yeah.
Break into trying to figure out what is that story in the world idea.
That's great. I find personally, once I get past that stage, once you get to that notion and you start kind of very loosely stringing together some kind of plot idea, I personally find that I try to find some kind of controlling idea, some kind of thematic, a theme because if I don't, I find the story can go in any direction. And so really early on, I try to nail a theme, which doesn't mean the theme can't change through the development of the story, but I do try to find that controlling idea as soon as possible, which really controls the arc of the characters and all kinds of things. I was wondering how you felt about that, because I've worked with other directors that really don't worry about theme and they let the theme kind of emerge as it goes. And I try to do the opposite of that myself.
Yeah, no, that's a really important thing to do, because what you end up doing, but what I end up doing is I found through just my time of working with these great storytellers and figuring out my own kind of structure and my own template, is I found also an absolutely amazing way to find the theme, because the theme has always been a little bit, for me, when my bosses would ask me what was the theme, sometimes it's hard to articulate what it is.
Yeah.
And what it really is the character has a certain belief system when they start the movie, right?
Right.
And they have to learn to believe, they have to learn to commit to the belief, the new belief that they have to learn, right? And so when your character commits to their belief is when their dream comes true. Like it's a very simple template.
Yeah,
You look at it, it works for every project. So, for instance, Remy in Ratatouille and Luke from Star Wars, what they need to learn to believe is the same thing. They have to believe, they have to be themselves. They have to believe in themselves and be themselves. That's all they have to do. Luke has to know he has the Force in him. Remy has to just be himself. He wants to be a chef. He can't, And other stories have more specific ones where they have to learn a belief system. But when you break that down, it just helps my brain to kind of figure it out. And then you're right. Then you know your ending generally, and you'll know how to start.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I find that thematic, if you look at it as an instruction, I find that then that tends to work better. So, you need to learn to believe in yourself. You need to, and the more specific, obviously, you can get, the more specific of a story you can get. Because I try to explain that to people, your theme isn't love. You got to say something about love. What is it about love that you're saying? Negative, positive, whatever it might be. And then that's where you're going to find your theme, which I find that's interesting. That's great.
You're right, and it does come from a global place a lot of times, but then it needs to be specific to the story and still kind of work globally, because it is funny because you do have people articulate like, well, the theme is love, and you're right, that just doesn't work. It's too global.
Right. So as you're going, what is your process in refining that story? You start to rough it out. You found kind of a theme to work with. What do you do next?
Well, what happens in a story, and one thing is I use templates. I use them to get this templates like other movies and see how they work against this template. And it just kind of helps you to sort of see how did they do it, Right. And so what we found is, I call it the mainstream way versus the right way. So there's the mainstream way. If you find that sort of the world view of what is pushing the main character into the wrong belief system, is that worldview. So that's the mainstream. I like terms just for myself that are very universal, that are just easy. You know what they're saying by the terminology. So everybody thinks this way, right? And the right way is the way that the hero has to learn, right? Which is a lot more difficult because it's the opposite of the mainstream. So he has to go up against the system in a way, Right. And once you know that, once you have that articulated, that needs to be set up really early on. So then what you end up doing is this is something that, and again, the template is you can go in order if you already have your story written, or you can just, when you have an idea, you can pop right into a spot and say, well, that seems like the midpoint or whatever. But if you're looking at the beginning, how is it that the main character is being kept from their dream, their ultimate dream that they want to accomplish? So the mainstream way is forcing them to not be able to accomplish that, right? So if you look at Ratatouille, it's obvious he's a human world rat in a human world. He can't go in the human kitchen. But that's the place where he loves to cook and all that. Right. So it's an obvious one, right? But how is your story going to show how the mainstream is keeping the hero from their dream,
Right.
you know, and yeah. And then, you know, you early on, you need to hint at what the right way is, what is the right way, which is being himself, or just, you know, not trying to change who he is, which is very dangerous. Like anybody can cook, you know, is kind of that opening sets that up. So once you have those two things, then it tracks beautifully, you know?
Yeah. And I want to point out for the people that are watching too, when you say a template, we're not talking formula, because I've tried to explain this to other people too, and they say to me, "What are you talking about? You're trying to be formulaic?" I said, "No, it's not a formula. It's a template that you can lay over whatever it is that you're creating, and it really helps you find if you're having a problem with a character in a story or a plot point or whatever. It's a way of laying and kind of troubleshooting." You know, the structure, the writing, whatever it is that you're doing, and just kind of it guides you in the right direction, really. And you know, that's what templates do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and that was one of the reasons why after working with, you know, I worked with the you know, the writer and director of Lion King when I was doing Lion King 1.5, and then I ended up working with John Lasseter, as you did, and you know all these people that I know. I'm just saying for the audience, I
Right.
was working with, you know, probably better than I do, but as I was going through this process, I realized, wait a minute, do I have a formula that sort of works for everybody that I've been working for, works for me? And what I did, it's really amazing, Aaron, is I took Toy Story, Ratatouille, The Godfather, Star Wars, Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Wow.
Graduate, and they all fit the template. Rocky,
Right.
all fit the template, and it goes on. Beverly Hills Cop. I mean, they all fit the template. And what it is things slide where your story needs to make them, you know, to make it work. But of all movies, the one that actually fits the best to the template is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which
Wow.
is such a wild movie.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It is actually spot on, almost to the page of my sort of generic template that I start with. It's amazing.
Wow. So let's just back up a little bit for folks that might not know you and your history and your background. You want to talk a little bit about your background and how you've kind of gained the knowledge that you have to be where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, thanks you. I started off with when I started working in the industry. My actual first job was to do in-betweens for Don Bluth.
Wow.
And it was really amazing. And I wanted to do storyboards. I had an opportunity to be an animator. I was an assistant animator for Jean Morel, actually.
Wow.
And he was amazing. I learned so much from him. And I had the opportunity to be an animator. And at that time, Don Bluth Studios were a little bit troubled financially. So he gave everybody 3 minutes to discuss with him, here are my worries, I'm buying a house, you know, whatever. And so everybody had that minute just sitting across the chair with him.
Wow.
And I was the only one, he later told me, but I walked in and all I said was, I want to do storyboards for you. How could I do that? And he was impressed by that. And I don't know if you know Barry Atkinson. He was the art director on the movie that we were working on at that time. And Barry was great. He helped me shape my storyboard test to give to Don. And when Don saw it, he liked it and moved me out to Ireland. And he trained me after a disastrous story pitch.
No kidding.
He trained me one-on-one, just sat there with me and showed me how to do storyboards. And the guy's amazing as an individual storyteller, like individual scenes. He's amazing. And I learned so much from that one experience. And then later in my career, I was lucky enough to get Lion King 1.5, and I got to work with Irene Mecchi and Roger Allers, and they were on the team. They were not like, they checked in at the very least every week.
Yeah.
Actually wrote on the project. And it was a really hard project to write because we're just echoing Lion King 1. And how do you do that and make it a compelling story? So there was a lot of work that had to go into that. And I learned a lot on that. And then the biggest one was working with John Lasseter, and he brought in his team. I got to meet with, you know, Pete Docter and the whole gang and you know, Maggie Malone and Keel Murray and Mary Coleman, all these people that are part of the Story Trust. And that's where I really started honing my course and my template, is learning what I learned in the past and putting it into, the fear factor of, oh my God, I got to pitch to John Lasseter. You know what that is.
Yeah.
And he's so sweet. He's not saying this better be as good as Toy Story. He's very
Right.
cool, as you know, and he's almost like a kid going in. He's excited, but you start picking up the intangibles, and I just started creating this template off of that experience.
That's great. It's amazing. And so you've taken it. Obviously, we've got this course on the site now, and I was wondering, do you want to talk a little bit about what's in the course and what people are gonna learn a little bit more specifically?
Yes, absolutely. It's a series of videos that goes through. It's over 8 hours worth of information that basically gives you a really, really a masterful, sort of a master of storytelling. It gives you that, like, the intangibles. If you just follow the videos, are very simple and very straightforward. So what it is it breaks down every single moment that goes into a screenplay, right? Every single moment. So there's not a page that is not touched on. So it's not like every 10 pages or every 20 pages. It's
Right.
every single page and why.
That's
and where
great.
it leads to. And it actually has the entire character arc, which is always, these are the things that I bumped on and everybody in the room bumped on when they were trying to figure out, well, what are we doing with the story and why is this not working and why are we being asked to put more emotion, that kind of stuff. It's all that stuff is there in great detail, but very, very simple and easy to understand because I need that. I it's hard. Some of the terms that are in screenplay books and stuff, and people,
Right.
they don't even make sense to me what that means, the term means, right? I kind of read terminology. The terminology is a little bit different, but it's very straightforward. And really, it really is amazing because I've worked with, collaborated with writers who are award-winning writers. And I actually recently a best-selling author who just couldn't believe it. He was like, I can't believe how simple and it really is true. I mean, it worked on several of my movies and stuff. So it really is an accurate thing and it's not a formula.
That's great.
Yeah.
What do you find when you get into screenwriting and you get into the whole story process? There's parts that I love, there's parts that I dread, there's parts that I feel like I'm good at, there's parts that I really struggle with. What part do you love the most? What part do you struggle with? What are some of the, in the steps of writing, where do you kind of thrive and struggle?
Well, what I really gravitate towards is one of my favorite moments. There's two moments. There's the what everybody calls the inciting incident.
Yeah.
It's kind of the out of the blue moment on my course. That moment is very exciting to me because that's when everything kicks in. That's when somebody gets a letter that they, that somebody dies and leaves them $1 million, whatever.
It's that call to adventure. Yeah.
Call to adventure. I love that moment, but what moment really, really, really excites me, and it took me a long time to learn this moment because I never knew how the character believably gets to go into act two.
Right.
So it's got to be the main character has to want to go into act two. It has to be their choice, even if people are trying. There's a lot of stories where people are trying to convince them. But what happens after the inciting incident, when the character goes through this sort of aftermath moment, everything comes to a head where they literally become themselves fully for the first time. And it leads to a reckless act that puts them into rock bottom.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, it's Woody literally is Andy's favorite. And when Buzz comes in, and you get to see during the aftermath moment of all the toys love him. He can even bounce on the ball and fly and all this stuff. Woody learns who he really is.
Yeah.
He's jealous. It's all about him being number one. It's not about Andy's being happy. And he tries to push him into the back of the bed, right?
Right. Yeah.
Then the other example is, which is an opposite to a completely different movie, is in Ratatouille. Remy, the moment Remy goes into rock bottom, which is just before act two, is actually when he starts remaking the soup, fixing the soup in the kitchen.
Oh yeah.
So in that moment, it like all the, he's in a kitchen full of humans, and the reckless act for him is he stands there right in the middle of not in the middle of the kitchen, but right in the kitchen with all these humans around. And you remember how emotional that scene and how spiritual that scene is.
Yeah.
He becomes himself for the first time. He's cooking in a kitchen, Gusteau's kitchen, and he lets himself go, and then he gets caught, and he eventually rock bottom almost dies.
Right.
Whereas he's rock bottom as he pushes Buzz, and all the toys think he's a murderer.
Right.
And now he can't stay there, and Remy is in the same situation until he accepts Linguini's offer, and he has to go out and get Buzz. So I love that moment when the character has a sort of either becomes themselves, or you find their true essence of who they are inside of that time, and
I agree.
Ultimately catapults them into that.
Because it really does start to unfold the story for you, right? When you finally can define it, you find that arc that character has to go through, or find that thing like you were talking about. Then all of a sudden you can't write fast enough. It's you can start to feel that story unfold. And the other thing too, when that happens, it's finding that moment in the third act where you can start mirroring those two pieces together. I love trying to find those. Your first act business that you were just talking about, and how to mirror that in the third act, and how you can't have one without the other. All that stuff in between it's incredibly hard to write, but finding those two things, the place to start and the place to get to, I really love finding those. And then you go, okay, now we got to connect them with, 60 minutes worth of film and storytelling,
No, it's great. You're right. And it does mirror. I mean, it's so amazing to have a very powerful ending, the big climax moment that leaves you, with the great movies, give you that great ending. That actually is my hardest. That's the one that I dread, because it's always the hardest, because it has to be powerful and really meaningful. And there's a lot of like near misses. You're really close. It happens for me to find that moment is a great feeling, but that's the one where I kind of struggle.
Yeah.
It's a great moment when you do find it. You're right. And it mirrors beautifully the earlier part. That's a good tip, actually, to find a way to find that, because, sometimes you just need to just cut to the chase. Like, what is the recipe? I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We've got this course that just come out from you, and we're really excited about it. And I was wondering if you can talk about, a little bit about what people are going to find in the course, and how you've come to create what's in the course.
Well, that's a good question, because, just going back to what we were talking about, as far as the part that I struggle the most is that big climax.
Yeah.
The big endings. You go through that process, and it's so hard to find it. But I remember one of the movies that I directed was Lion King 1.5, and I remember that moment specifically is the moment where the character literally, commits to that belief system they have to learn. And Timon doesn't know that his thing is he's got to be useful and helpful to his community. That's the way meerkats live, so they survive.
Right.
The beginning of the movie, all he was doing is trying to create a skylight. He was trying to do things for him.
Right.
And he thought he was going to help everybody out to make their life better, but really what he was doing is it for himself. And so at the end of the movie, the hyenas are right on Timon and his family. They were right, back against the wall. And that was the moment where he actually runs toward the hyenas, jumps underground, and digs tunnels to and sacrifices himself in order to use that using what he should have done earlier on in the movie, the mirroring, like you said.
Yeah.
He commits to that, and he saves the day. But he actually commits to being a meerkat for the first time. And we had to find that and put it in a place in the story that it felt natural. It wasn't like he said, "Hey, Mom, I just learned how to be a meerkat." It's in a moment when you don't think about it. And he's like, all I can do now, because the cave-in didn't work, it was like a trap, he has to go in and actually dig it. So that's how you kind of mirror it. Like you were saying, mirroring it. At the beginning, he hated digging and doing all that. And at the end, he risked his life to do it to save his family, which is exactly what he had to learn.
Exactly. So, that's great. So we get the full circle, and that's awesome.
The full circle of life.
Yeah, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 35 years now, and I love sitting down and having these conversations with fellow filmmakers and story artists and story writers and all of that, because it's just I learn something new every time. And then, right when you think, oh yeah, I got a good handle on this, you always learn something new. And I love these conversations.
Me too. I could talk all day. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I'm really excited for the folks that are watching. We've got a sneak peek coming up after this video from one of the videos from the course. And if you want to get the full course, you can go on over to creatureartteacher.com and check it out there. We're really excited about it. We're so happy to have Brad on with us today. Thank you so much, Brad, for being here and taking the time and sharing all your knowledge in this course.
Oh, thank you so much, Aaron. I'm a big fan, as I said, and I really appreciate you having me on. I'm just really excited about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And for the rest of you out there, enjoy this sneak peek. Go on over to creatureartteacher.com to check out the rest of the course. And after that, go ahead and put some beauty back into the world. And I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, I'm Brad Raymond, and I hope you enjoy my course where I talk about everything it takes to write a great screenplay. Every single detail, from how to write a satisfying character arc, what happens actually at the midpoint, and how to make an absolutely memorable and amazing climax in Act 3. But it's much more than that. It's really storyboarding, storytelling in general. So if you are directing a movie, it tells you exactly what happens in each moment, in your movie, and how you can stage it. So it kind of helps you do that. And if you're a storyboard artist and you are handed a individual sequence, you can find where that sequence is on the template, and it'll help you to know exactly what should happen in that moment in the story. And it really does help you to storyboard the sequence. It really did for me when I was storyboarding. And so I hope you enjoy the course, and then you can join me over on my website at onepagescreenplay.com, where I'll be doing more live sessions with personalized feedback. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for signing up. I cannot wait to get started. But first, let me tell you all about my course. We're going to begin by going through all the fundamental moments that make up every great screenplay. They're very easy to understand, very simple, intuitive. You'll always remember them. And then we're going to take those moments and put them onto one page, onto a color-coded, very easy visual template, so that you can see your entire screenplay or series all on one page. That was life-changing for me, because then you can actually build your story and see if it's working. And then taking that template, we're going to compare it to some of the greatest movies ever made and see just how perfectly it fits. It was just amazing when it fits, because now you have a great template to write your own great screenplay. And then after that, I'm going to take you through my process. So whenever I start a project, I have a bunch of ideas, or I have a story, or I'm adapting a book, or whatever it is, and I start to build my template. We're going to start to build the template so that you can start building your template. And I'm going to use examples of my next screenplay. So I'm going to take my ideas that I'm just starting to work with, and I'm going to start building my next screenplay onto a template, so you can kind of see, how it actually works, the thinking of taking ideas and formulating them onto the template. And continuing with my process, I'm going to show you how then I translate this template onto the screenplay, like actually taking it from template to screenplay. And really, the template is a map. It's something that you can just follow as you're writing. This way you don't get lost in the weeds, And then, and just lastly, I'd like to leave you with the 4 F words that will guide us. They always guide me. And the first one is faith. So once I knew this template worked and I used it on a number of projects, I suddenly had faith that I was going to finish my project, faith that it was going to turn out great, faith that all this works. And what that does is then it gives you freedom to just be creative. All you have to do now is create your moments, create your scenes. It's unbelievable because you don't have to worry. Your mind doesn't have to go to that place of, am I in the right spot? Am I putting this in the right spot? Now you can just use your creative side and just start creating great moments. It really is. It just frees you up to be creative. And then it gave me a whole new sense of focus. Once I took these ideas, putting them onto the template, you have this whole new sense of focus of where these moments should fit. And it's really, really, really enlightening. It's very, very inspiring. And lastly, a very simple one is fun. Now, the F word I always wrote with before was fear, because I just did not know where I was. I was making it up as I went along, just hoping what I read in the books and the classes and all this stuff would come through. But I still it was fear, and you can't be creative that way. So instead, it's fun, because how often is it, how great is it when you come home and you saw something really amazing, you can't wait to tell somebody about it, tell somebody about an experience, tell somebody about an old family story, whatever it is. That's what screenwriting is. You're just telling these moments, you're stringing together all these great moments. That's all it is. So once you know that you have the freedom to create, because you have the faith that you're going to finish this, you focus on your template. When you start to write, it's fun. You're writing a movie. You're seeing it all come to life. You're just telling these stories to people with your fingers. It's absolutely amazing. So now I cannot wait to get started. So on the next video, we're going to get right into it and start to create our main character. I can't wait to see you there. Thank you. It's kind of hard to start writing a screenplay or a series without a great main character. Did you know that there's actually 3 different types of main characters? First type of main character are in these 4 examples. They're all the same type of character, from Rocky to Angela from the Watchmen series, Ben from The Graduate, or Evelyn from Everything Everywhere All at Once. These are all protagonists. It's a term that's very universal, and it means it's a character that comes in flawed, and by the end of the story, they transform. So it's the only type of main character that actually changes. It's the protagonist. These next 4 examples, these are all main characters. Remy from Ratatouille, Wednesday from Her series, Axel from Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, and of course, Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. These are all the main characters, but they're not the protagonists. These are antagonist heroes. And the reason is they don't change. These characters are not flawed. The only thing that they have to do in their stories are be themselves, in essence. And that's what a main character who is an antagonist is. They come in and they change the world. They actually change the world around them. They change the characters around them, but they never change. So then in this last one, these 4 characters, you have Michael from The Godfather, Red from The Shawshank Redemption, Woody from the original Toy Story, and Ripley from Alien. These are all the same types of characters. Are they antagonists? Yes, because they force change in their world. Are they protagonists? Yes, because they come in flawed and they end up transformed for better or worse. They're a combination character. They're both flawed and they force change. But what I like to call them, because it's an amazing way, and it all depends on how the story's written, the story's written a specific way, but these are dormant heroes. Michael left the family. He's completely set and happy. He's going to marry Kay, and he separated himself from the family. He's happy. That's great. Red, who we, in the Shawshank Redemption, he's institutionalized, which we learned from the movie, and he has a set life. He's content. He's not longing to get out of prison. In fact, because he's institutionalized, he really doesn't want to. So he has a set life, no conflict. Woody is Andy's favorite, and the only thing he has to deal with is the anxiety of the other toys and sort of organizing the bedroom and everything. No conflict, no story. Ripley loves the company. She has her place in the company. All the things they talk about with the pension hours and shares and all that. She's set. She loves the company. She believes in the company. None of these four characters have anything, you know, that even like slightly resembles story conflict until the inciting incident. And in all four examples, for better or worse, this life that they come accustomed to has been taken away. They're really fascinating characters. So what happens to them is their life is taken away from them, and that's when they have to face their flaws, force change, and all that. It's really amazing. But what's absolutely fascinating about all three types of main characters is that I just call them heroes. They are all the same. The story is what dictates what type of character they are. And the components that make up great characters are the same for all three types. As a creator, it makes it so simple. So on the next video, I will actually walk you through all those components, and it's so easy and simple. I can't wait to see you then. Thank you. Okay, so now for this video, I want to dig deeper and deeper into the main character, into the hero. So every great character, you have those main components that we just talked about, but where it's, you know, their want, their need, their belief, and their dream, those are all very important, but they don't mean much without an amazing world around them. How does the world around them keep them from getting all of those things? That's really what it is. The world is keeping your hero from getting what they want, need, believe, and dream of. So the first component of a world is, I like to call it the mainstream way. Okay, in the mainstream way, it's basically an overbearing way that everybody believes in, or everybody has to believe in. Depending on the story, it could be anything, but it's so heavy-handed. It could be a family unit, it could be a school, a business, a country, a galaxy. It could be whatever it is, or a group of friends, whatever it is. It's the mainstream way, and it's the heavy burden that's keeping the hero from their dream. And then there's the right way. I named it the right way. Mainstream way is very easy to get. Mainstream, just simple. The right way is really the way the hero has to learn to go, right, in order to get their dream. So they have to learn the right way, learn how to believe in the right way, and all that. So the right way, it's a risky alternative to the mainstream way. Being in the mainstream way, they can just do it the way everybody else does. The powers that be will be happy, and that's just what they, that would be the smart choice, the easy choice. Not really the smart choice, the easy choice. But the right way, going against it because it's right, or they know it's right, as the hero knows it's right, is really risky. Okay, so I just want to use Star Wars, keep going in that direction, since we've already started with Star Wars as the example. In Star Wars, the Empire is the mainstream way. There's no way of avoiding that. That's so clear. That's why it's a great example, because you could just you just get it. Dictatorship, the powers that be, extremely overbearing, their way or the highway, their way or death. It's perfect. It's an amazing, great example, great inspiration for as you design or create yours, right? But we don't introduce Luke. The movie doesn't introduce Luke until much later, like something like 16, 17 pages in. So all of the choices and the things that he does, and the powers that be that keep him from his dream and his want and all that, and his need, everything can't be the Empire. There is no Empire presence. The story would fall apart if there were, right? So what you do is falling under dictatorship, the powers that be. I just use dictatorship as a general idea, because that's clearly what the Empire is. But Uncle Owen is a good guy, and he wants what's best for Luke, but he's afraid of what could happen. There's all kinds of stuff we don't know about from when we first saw the first movie, but he's trying to keep Luke there because he's worried about him and whatever. But whatever it is, he is the dictator in Luke's life. Okay, so he falls under that umbrella, even though he's not a bad guy. So when you're creating your mainstream way, it's an umbrella that shares a basic uber idea. So you just say, dictatorship, good and bad. Everybody can relate to, a strict parent or whatever. And there's also a component that's big, is Han Solo, he represents selfishness, or looking out only for yourself and not for the bigger, broader scope, right? So he's a good guy too, but he falls under dictatorship, also is selfish. Uncle Owen, I mean the Empire, of course, is selfish. They want whatever is best for them. Uncle Owen's being selfish, not letting Luke go on like his friends. His friends are clearly the same age, and he's being held back, and he's doing it for whatever it is. It's selfish toward Luke, right? And then the right way is definitely the rebels and the good guys. So it's good against evil in a lot of ways. And what better character than the amazing Princess Leia, who's the head of the rebels, and she is the representative, and she's toe to toe there with the Empire. So it sets it up beautifully in the movie. We know now what that is, and we see just how risky it is with their threats toward her and on through the story, right? But there's another element, and this is where that umbrella comes in, is Obi-Wan and the Force. So the Force is everybody's connected is the idea of the Force, right? And they have this power because everybody's connected. And so everybody's connected is another way of saying democracy and togetherness, and we're all in this together. Whereas the Empire is, I'm only out for myself, basically, especially Han, right? So that's the two kind of umbrellas of the world. The bad side, I like to call it, and the good side. Whether it doesn't matter what it is, it's bad for the hero or it's good for the hero, but it's really risky, and but it is the right choice. That's what I call it, mainstream way and right way. This is just a quick video to explain a download I have available for you right now. It's called the Logbook. And it's what I use when I start a new project. It's just a place to just unload and put all of your ideas down and to sort of log what different aspects of your story that you're going to have to figure out at some point or another. And let me just share it with you, and I'll explain how I use it. Basically, the way I look at this is, now if you have an entire story already kind of written out and now you want to put it into a screenplay form, which is great, you can use this. You may not need this as much, but you would actually put in your title, your name, your hero's name, what the dream, want, need, belief, all that stuff. And you add in the first step, second step plan, all that stuff. Mainstream way, right way. You can start figuring out from the story that you've written, where do all these things belong. But if you don't have a story and you just have, an idea or a character, that is totally, absolutely cool, or a premise, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because the way, as you're going through these videos and you're getting more and more information about what makes a great screenplay or series story, and how the whole thing kind of comes together, it's a good time to start formulating the story and formulating the characters and formulating all this. This is it's a great tool. And whenever I start a project, and sometimes I just start with an idea. Sometimes I start with a book that a studio wants me to write, turn into a series or whatever. That means that kind of qualifies as something that's already written. Then I start placing it into this logbook as I just slowly start building and creating it. And then eventually this information will then be transferred into the template, right? But basically it's just pretty self-explanatory. You just kind of write in, that is too much to go against, whatever. This is just your for you only. That's the other thing too. This is not for anybody to see, and I always like to have it look good, so I try to make it look like something that when you go back to read it, it's easy to read. It's not too busy, so I like to separate what the titles are the ones that are bolded and underlined and that kind of thing. And then for the ideas, what kind of what I was going for with the ideas when I start doing this is, it is like, for instance, you just have an idea, and the way to do it is, say, is for The Godfather. Say Michael is outsmarts, the killers at the hospital, right? And then what I like to do, if I know that he's going to outsmart them by pretending to have a gun. We know that, right? And then this is just, I'm just imagining this. And then what if you're still trying to formulate your story, you're still trying to figure things out, which is awesome. What I would do is, in parentheses, if I had a concern about the scene, I'd say, but he's only one person. Maybe they're worried that the bad guys are not going to care that it's just one guy with a gun. They'll just come out with more guys with the gun, right? So somehow it just doesn't feel right. So there's only one person, ... How to get more people with them, right? Now, we know that in the movie, I'm making this up too, this is just like a sort of fake question, and that could come up as you're writing. And I do something like, I'll put 4 question marks, right? It'll just be, that's my system to do it. So those are the questions I still have. And then what I'll do is I will put a title. Because this will all be under one movie. It'll be, if you were writing Godfather, this is what you would just say: outsmarts killers, because it's always about your main character, or your protagonist or antagonist hero. And then you will just bold and underline it. That way, when you go back to, when you're skimming your stuff, as you're skimming your ideas, as you're going to start putting them into your template, you will then be able to find it pretty easily, or if it's a lot more written there, and it's okay, by the way, just unload your ideas, or don't write anything at all until you're ready. This is not something you need to fill out the first step, the second step, the hero. None of this stuff has to be filled out until you have an idea. You come up with an idea. This is a tool to help you put it somewhere so you can get it out of your head and move on to the next idea. Because remember what I talked about, you already have the faith this is going to work. So now it gives you the freedom to just create. But this is not a test or a questionnaire you have to fill out. This is just something, is a tool for whenever you have the ideas. But what's really cool here is when you set it up for search. So now what I do is, let's say you have a bunch written. You already have a story, and you kind of put it into this, or as time goes on, as you're watching these videos and you get a lot of inspiration, which will happen, which is great. You start adding things, you start just different ideas, and you just start putting them there. As long as you have a title, you're always going to be able to kind of skim it and find it, right? But all those little question marks about what about this, what about that, it's just something you put in parentheses with the 4 question marks, right? And what I love doing is I'll just put it up here as a search, the 4 question marks, when it comes time, and it'll bring you to those spots. So if you realize, okay, there's places I knew I needed to deal with before I can start putting it into my template, I always do the 4 question mark search, and then it'll just bring you to them. So then you can find it. And as you come up with a solution there and say, oh, it's going to be Enzo, the baker will show up, and that'll be at least 2 guys out front, and the bad guys will see 2 guys, assume there's more guys inside. That sells that concern, right? And there's all kinds of all the different possibilities you can put in here. You get rid of those question marks, and if you don't have solutions for the other things, which will come in time, they just come to you because it's always in the back of your mind. Then when you do the next 4 question mark search, you'll find them, the ones that are left over. And then if you think, I think I got them all, do one more search, and oh, there's one I forgot. And then you have everything ready to put into your template, and we'll definitely go over that at the time. Again, it's just a tool. It's just for you. Nobody will ever have to read that. Doesn't have to be perfect grammar or whatever. You're just getting the ideas out of your head onto somewhere that you know it's been logged and you don't have to think about it again. And having the ideas out of your head, at least for me, is now your head doesn't just get filled up with so many ideas, you start forgetting them. And also it doesn't free you up to get new ideas, right? So once you've logged an idea, your brain will be clear to have new, fresh ideas come as you're starting to build your story. So now you'll have this by your side. It's awesome, and you're doing great. You're getting a lot of information all at once. But in the next section where we start really, seeing some of these moments and the template and examples, that's when all these ideas are going to be coming to you, and it's great to have this logbook ready to go. So until then, we will see you in the next section.